Welcome to the Miracle Mansion podcast. My name's Markkus. I'm head of treatment and counselling at Broadway Lodge. I've got. Why don't you just introduce yourself?
My name is Stephen Otto. I'm an ex-resident.
Lovely.
The Miracle Mansion, yeah.
Yeah, I've got the beautiful Stephen Otto with me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So before we just start, I want all our people to like, subscribe, leave comments, and Stephen and I are just going to have a conversation this morning about his life, pre-addiction, what brought him to Broadway Lodge, and what recovery looks like today.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you two miracle questions.
Okay.
What you think people need to get through how to get through Broadway Lodge. You know,
okay. Yeah.
Your advice about getting through Broadway Lodge.
Mm-hmm.
And one tip for the future for recovery.
Okay. I'll try.
So, cool.
Yeah.
So, Steve, thank you for coming down. Obviously, I love and appreciate you as always. It's always good to see you and
Likewise.
catch up with you.
Yeah.
How are the girls?
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Cool.
Running me ragged, but beautiful.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Growing up quick.
Nice.
Yeah.
I want you to talk. Talk about them as part of your recovery as well. So just tell me about yourself. Tell me about how you got to Broadway Lodge and how addiction gripped you.
Yeah. Well, it's some story really. I guess Broadway Lodge is just one part of the story, a story that began, I guess, a long, long time ago, as it is for everyone. You know, no one actually, you know, when they're young thinks, right, I'm going to become an addict, or you know, ends up in the places they end up. But that's where I ended up, and I suppose for me, once I finally got there, for me, it was kind of at that point when I was in the grip of addiction, certainly when I was getting into drugs and crime and so on and so forth. For me, it was almost a rite of passage. Do you know what I mean?
In what way?
Well, you know, I guess because of my upbringing.
Okay.
You know, because of my upbringing and the things I experienced as a child, led me to believe that was the place where people like me ended up.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. How would you describe your upbringing?
Well, it was traumatic. Yeah, traumatic from the off, and I think about it a lot, you know. And obviously there are some parts I don't remember because I was too young, but there are other parts I do remember. And you know, I grew up in the care system.
Okay.
Yeah. So what happened is later on in life, one of my brothers requested the files because obviously when you're in care they hold files. So I was actually able to go through. I read through the files and actually find out what took place before we ended up in care, because a lot of that stuff was, you know, I couldn't remember it. There were some things I remembered. So, yeah. The bits I didn't remember, which I found out was our mum, who was, you know, a Jamaican immigrant. She came to this country when she was very young. Met my father, who was a serial womanizer, let's put it that way. You know?
Okay.
And, you know, she had 4 kids straight off, me and my brothers, one after the other, you know. So there's like a year between each of us. But she was quite young, and what used to happen was she would lock us all in the flat. And we'd be there for days on end on our own.
Right.
This is the stuff I learned. Those are the bits I kind of don't remember, but thinking about it now, I mean, I guess from that point, that's when, you know, the trauma, I guess, began. Yeah. Yeah. Neglect, abandonment. We were malnourished. We'd hardly eat. We'd be in the same nappies for days and so on and so forth. And yeah, I guess you could say that's where my you know, the lack of security that a child needs in order to become productive and stable and balanced.
Kids need to feel safe and secure.
Exactly, safe and secure.
You didn't have that from the start. From the get-go.
Yeah, from the get-go. I didn't have that from the get-go. So, I obviously, I believe, and it's probably the case. So certain, beliefs, thinking, attitudes, and feelings were set in stone then.
Okay. Well, you certainly would have had attachment issues.
Absolutely, yeah.
You certainly would have had attachment issues from way back when, as a result of obviously the primary caregiver not being there for you, primary caregiver being your mum.
Yeah.
So there would have been some sort of attachment issue.
Yeah.
Whichever attachment issue that
Mm-hmm.
manifested in itself.
Yeah, without a doubt. So so that was the beginning, and it kind of. I guess you could say it got worse because, one day she left the flat, locked us in the flat, and the flat caught on fire. So, and my younger brother, who was 6 months old at the time, I think I must have been like a year and a half, he was badly burnt. Luckily, me and my other two brothers, we were pretty much unscathed, but we made it out of the flat alive. Yeah. I guess you could say that was my first brush with death, really. That close. But at that point, we were removed from my mother's care. Okay. That was it. Yeah, they were like, enough. And we were placed into care. Yeah. Which was Tower Hamlets.
Right, okay.
Yeah, it was East London. So we ended up in a children's home in Tower Hamlets, East London. Yeah. And that's where we stayed. Our mother signed us over full time. And
what was that like?
I can remember just being terrified. I remember being terrified. And it's funny because things I remember. So I was still quite young, but I remember being put in a fire engine. That's one of the things I remember. It's one of my earliest memories. Mm-hmm. And I remember the first time I went into the children's home and I was being pushed in a wheelchair. So, I mean, I was a sensitive child anyway. I was hypersensitive,
I can imagine.
And like I say, I was quite felt quite insecure anyway, But like any child, I just remember just wanting to be with my mother.
Yeah,
and that's it. I just remember that, and
that yearning, yearning for your mum.
Yeah,
I can completely relate to that because my mum left for reasons at an early age, and I just remember always wanting my mum. Yeah, just wanting. Where is she? Well, you don't want to be with her. So
well, that's it.
That.
That's it. And like being in a children's home, kids used to come and go all the time.
Right. Okay.
Kid would come in, and for short periods, and then their parents would come and pick them up, or they'd go back to their parents.
Yeah.
And so that was another thing for me. Like I would see that happening all the time, and so I'd be thinking, well, when's
your mum?
When's my mum coming to pick us up? When are we going home? And
I take it that didn't happen.
It never happened. And it got to a point where, in the end, the staff member, this lovely woman, she's probably the closest thing I've ever had to her mother. Actually, I remember her really well. She's like an angel. She had to sit me down and tell me, like, no one's coming for you. In the end, she had to sit me down because I used to get so upset and so beside myself that eventually she had to sit me down. She just had to say, look, no one's coming. Like, you're here to stay, and that's it,
Were your brothers with you at the time?
My brothers were with me. My younger brother, he spent the first 3 years of his life in Great Ormond Street because he was so badly burnt. So he was there constantly. I mean, again, memories. I remember having to go and visit him at Great Ormond Street and so on and so forth. But, my brothers were there. Of course. And, that was another thing. She was like, it's just you and your brothers. All you've got is you and your brothers, that's it. You've got to look after each other. You've got to protect each other, So that was also something that was instilled in me at a very early age that later on became an issue, you could say, because I took it on as my role.
Yeah.
because, you know, it was expected of me that I was going to be the one who went on to do well, you know, because I was the cute little kid who had everything going. And I took that on board massively. I took that on board. And, yeah, like I was the protector and this, that and the other. And it was an impossible task, which only led to a lot of pain, really, a lot more pain. But, you know, it is what it is. And you know, to be honest with you, I always believed that we'd always be together, me and my brothers, but that never happened. You grow up and things happen, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, there was that. Yeah.
Brother, what a start.
Yeah.
What a start.
That
Do you know
was
what? I'm listening to you and I'm just like, my heart's like, whoa.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously I know you well, but we've never really sat down and spoken like this. This start, just like, whoa.
Yeah, it was tough. It was a tough start, you know.
So what we're talking about the 70s?
70s.
Yeah, 70s. And you're in East London?
Yeah.
In a children's home?
In a children's home. So we was under the care of Tower Hamlets and we was in a children's home. But the children's home was actually in Essex, and it's a notorious children's home. Notorious.
Okay.
Yeah. Like it was basically an old Victorian gated development. So you went through the gates and there was loads of big Victorian houses which had basically been given as each one was a different children's home. But, you know, this place had been up and running for decades. But, you know, it was not a safe place. You know, it was not a safe place for children, you know. And like the historical abuse was just ridiculous. There's been a lot of cases for that place that have been set up and have
been investigations
where people have committed suicide and stuff's come out after that and they've looked into it, and there's been, you know, it was notorious, you know, one of the worst. And obviously me and my brothers, we were a permanent fixture there. We were there for almost 10 years, you know. We were there for a long time. Yeah, it was pretty tough. You know, a lot of stuff happened. But, yeah, that was that.
I was just, to be honest with you, I don't really want to go into any depth about anything, but like you said, a lot of stuff happened. The thing that I was thinking about really was we're talking about the 70s as three young black men, so black boys in one of those institutions. I can't even imagine what that...
Yeah, well, you know, it was unusual. Very unusual because
that's a good
like it was. We were unique. Yeah, I mean there were other black kids in there, but not a lot. It was predominantly white, and because you know, which was another thing I never really understood because I was under the impression that you know, African Caribbean families looked after their own. Yeah, and when someone fell, someone else picked it up. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So, like, I was thinking, well, where's my mum's mum? Because my mum's mum was in the UK. There was obviously my dad and extended family. And I always used to think, well, surely there's somebody who could take us in and look after us. But it never happened. It just didn't happen. So, you know, I think it was pretty unusual. It was unusual that we ended up in there and we ended up in there full time. I guess possibly it was because our mum signed us over and then that was that. But I'm guessing, you know, there was a period of time before that actually happened where we were in there and we still had the opportunity to go. In fact, it said it in the files. I read it in the files. She had several opportunities, my mum had several opportunities to take us back. And, you know, she was expected to visit certain days and she wouldn't turn up. Okay. And it was constant. Do you know what I mean? And so in the end, they were like, look, you know, this can't continue. Yeah. Like, what do you want to do? So that was that. Cool. But yeah, you know, that's basically what happened. That was the beginning. That was the start. That was the start. That's the foundation. That was the foundation. That was the foundation. And obviously, you know, a lot of my core beliefs were set in stone during that time. So unwanted, unloved, unlovable, rejection, abandonment, insecurity, identity, which was a big one later on in life. And fear, just fear, constant fear, and that was it. And just sadness, really, grief and sadness, that was it.
It's funny you just said that. As you said, grief and sadness. We do an assignment here called Grieving the Childhood That Was, which kind of really taps into all of those, all of that just a terrible childhood and what you didn't have and what it could have been and what it wasn't. And
that's it. And obviously a lot of questions arose from that.
Absolutely.
Definitely that kind of tormented me later on in life and throughout up until a point. And relationships. I mean, that's been hugely affected. So, at that point, I developed an ability to not get close or keep people at a distance because there wasn't any point. Certainly not with the kids, because, like I said, kids would come and then they would go. And I believe that I developed this ability to just be able to remain disconnected.
And distant.
And distant, which is still very much the case today.
Okay.
So when it comes to like developing relationships with people, it's tricky. It's tricky. I still have that. There's a line.
You still got a barrier.
There's a barrier. There's still a barrier. And I can just switch off. It's as simple as that.
But that's always the self-protection, the defense mode. Learned from way back.
Learned from way back. Learned from way back.
Yeah, it's still prevalent today.
Yeah, still very much prevalent today. Yeah, very much so. But it's changing. It's changing.
I know that.
It's soften up a bit, That'll change, hopefully. Cool. I think so anyway.
Cool.
So so that was it. And eventually we left the children's home. And again, it was a really unusual situation because, for one, we all got taken together, 4 boys, which was just incredible.
To
one
say
family.
Unusual.
Really unusual.
Wow.
They took all 4 of us, and it was a pretty quick one as well. And I never really understood why to this day, but it was what it was. And so we were fostered by a nice middle-class white family from Oxford, all 4 of us, and they took us off to Oxford and we left care. And it was all very nice and dressed up. I remember being quite excited about it. Finally we were getting out of care and we were going to a family and so on and so forth. But
cool.
The thing was, of course, was that by that time we'd been in care for that long that, there were issues.
Yeah.
And our problems were pretty much set in stone, Right. And I admired them for what they took on. Our adopted parents, I really admire them for what they took on, but they definitely bit off far more than they could chew. I don't think they saw that coming. They obviously weren't aware of what was going on in care because obviously they wouldn't have told them, and we were like ticking time bombs.
Okay.
There was a lot of rage. There was a lot of anger. There was a lot of hurt,
And they had 4 bombs in the house.
Yeah.
Christ.
Yeah.
God bless them for what they tried to do.
That's what they had. And I kind of respect that now. I used to feel like quite resentful towards them because of some of the ways they treated us. There was I never understood that. So they were quite physical. There was a lot of physical, like punishments and stuff like that. And at times, pretty brutal. You'd never get away with it nowadays, put it that way. But I guess it was the norm back then.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, I mean, even though, Caribbean, it's the same with Caribbean families and so on and so forth. It's like, you took licks.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And that was it. And back then, that's the way it was, which would have been fine, but they weren't my parents.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I didn't like much other people putting their hands on me.
Yeah.
And neither did my brothers, to the point. And we grew up. And that's one thing I could never understand. It's like, surely we're going to grow up. And
wow.
They got it back, unfortunately, but they got more than that. They got more than that back. They got everything, So they it sounds like they got the rage. They got the rage, yeah.
From way back.
From way back, yeah. God. Yeah, that's what they got.
Jesus.
And my two older brothers ended up back in care within no time, like a year and a half. They were back in care because they were not having it.
No.
They were not having it. And my two older brothers, they were tough. Really, really tough. Unlike myself. I was the complete opposite.
Okay.
I was soft. Yeah. I was the soft one. I was the crybaby. I can remember them. They used to tease me and torment me because I'd be one having nightmares and crying. And they were tough.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They weren't like that at all. They were the complete opposite, and they knew how to handle themselves. And I can remember just thinking to myself, I wish I was like my older brothers, man. Why can't I just be like them? And later on in life, really trying to emulate that and failing miserably.
Okay.
Having my brothers have to help me out of tricky situations. They'd give it a big do you know what I mean? But but we had to, we went to Oxford. We were feral. We went to Oxford. We came from East London, and we come out like a serious brutal system.
Yes, serious situation.
Serious situation, and I don't think, I don't know. It's not really ego. I don't think Oxford really was ready.
And do you know what? It's funny because we're having this conversation. Obviously, I know you from Oxford, but I never knew how you got to Oxford.
Yeah.
But I always used to think, how did them brothers get into Oxford?
Yeah.
Now I know.
Yeah.
And so you've got 4 feral youths.
Yeah.
In Oxford.
In Oxford.
Running.
Yeah. Running. Yeah. It was.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was something else. I look back at it now and I just think, it's now where I am now, I feel blessed. Really blessed. Do you know what I mean? Because Oxford is a beautiful place.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful house and a beautiful area we grew up in. Lots of kids, lots of families. Out playing all the time, It was great. But like I say, there were issues waiting to manifest themselves, Like I say, my 2 older brothers, and this was another thing, when we moved there and then all the violence started and the violence between my brothers and my adopted parents and them having to be taken back into care. At that point, that was the first time we'd ever been separated. Yeah, so my brothers went off to care and that was the first time we'd ever been apart.
Jesus. And
I remember, just being absolutely devastated, really upset and
if you're the sensitive one as well, that's going to be another it's going to be traumatic.
Yeah, it was traumatic. And then obviously you've got that thing whereby I'd always believed it's my job to look after them, protect them, and now they'd gone and I wasn't able to do that. So the helplessness of the situation. So it was a really scary time. I remember feeling quite distraught. I was very distraught. But again, I guess it was only a matter of time before, I kind of followed suit, but which is kind of what happened. You know, eventually I grew up as well, and I was angry, you know, and I'd had enough of them.
Their style of parenting.
Their style of parenting. I'd had enough.
Okay.
And you know, one day I grabbed a knife and I threatened to kill him. Put a knife to his throat. So I'm going to kill you. Do you know what I mean? And that was that. I was 14, and they were like, enough, leave, you know, and I was kicked out of home, and I found myself on the streets at 14. I was homeless. That was it. Now, I was kind of I was aware that, you know, not being 16 and only being 14, that, you know, social service still had the duty of care. Mm-hmm. And so I went to the social services in Oxford and I said, look, this is the situation. I've been kicked out of home. I grew up in care. You need to give me an hand. And the Oxford social services were like, you're not our responsibility. Yeah, if you need help, you need to go back to Hackney. And I thought, well, that's not going to happen. So I found myself homeless. That was it. I was out, and I began having to sofa surf around friends' houses. You know,
what, at 14 years old?
14 years old, yeah. And obviously, my friends were all still at school, so you know, I'd be on a sofa, and then they'd go to school, and I'd be wandering around Oxford all day, and again, I then, like, the fear kind of just went up a notch or several notches.
Yeah.
You know, because I was out on my own.
Yeah.
You know, my two brothers were still in the care system. Two older brothers were still in the care system. Yeah. So I remember just being alone. That was it. And it was at that point that I started using drink, and at that point weed, as a coping mechanism. Yeah, I'd experimented before that, but not to the extent that I was doing so there. And a lot of my friends were also drinking and smoking weed, and, you know. So that was it, you know. And like I said at the beginning, it was, you know, it's kind of like a rite of passage. Like, it was happening. It was like, well, it was the norm. I wouldn't have expected anything less. You know, every person I knew smoked and drank, and pretty much every person I knew was a criminal as well. They were into crime. I was in that circle. Yeah, that was the social circle I was in. Okay. And to me, it was no surprise, because again, like I said, it was like people who lived the life I'd lived. This is where they ended up. Yeah, this was it. Okay. On the street. Yeah, doing drugs, drinking. Surrounded by other criminals, you know. That was it. So for me, I just accepted my lot. This was it. This is what life is. Yeah. What do you expect? You know. And the rationalisation and justifications, which I kind of know now, but my attitude was, well, if you'd have been through what I'd been through, you'd be doing what I'm doing as well. You know, that was it, and that became kind of a mantra for me. Yeah,
sounds. Know? Yes, that's the right word. That's the mantra.
It's a mantra.
Yeah,
yeah, and that's what kept me in it for many years. You know, and kept me going. I suppose kept me in the madness for many years. But yeah, I'm
just still thinking. Just like raw.
Yeah, it's 14. Crazy. I'll tell you what. Yeah, it's funny because remember
it's wild.
It's wild, and I'll tell you what. I remember when I just left this place. I remember we were going to the schools to do the talks, and you were taking us to the schools to do the talks. Yeah, and I came along to do the talks to the kids in the schools, and we were doing the 14 and 15-year-olds.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah, and I can remember walking into the classroom, and I'm stood in the classroom, and I'm looking at these kids. I'm thinking, you were that age when you were on the, and I could not believe it. I was looking at them, they were children. And I was looking at them, I was thinking, that's how old you were. when you were on the street, that's how old you were. And I was looking at them, I was thinking, I could not imagine any single one of those not a single one of those kids being alone on the street.
Mad, isn't it?
It's just
beyond wild.
It's wild.
14.
It's sad, man. 14.
That's what I'm saying to you.
It was
crazy.
Scary.
It's crazy.
Yeah. But that was the situation. And for me, it was like, no surprise. Like I say, it was no surprise. It's like after everything else that had happened up until that point, it was like, well, here I am. This is it. This is my life. This is how it's meant to be. I'm not surprised.
You know what? It's really. I'm really glad you're telling the story the way that you're telling it, because sometimes some people see people in addiction, and all they see is that person scurrying around, begging, doing, gone to prison, but nobody knows. They never know the backstory.
The backstory, yeah.
And when you and it's not to say that everybody that goes into a children's home ends up being an addict or on drugs or anything like that. That's not what we're saying. But what I'm saying is sometimes when you rather than judging, when you find out the story and put into context, maybe some people have some more empathy for why some people end up in addiction.
Do
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
addiction was a coping mechanism for trauma.
Yeah.
Understand?
Certainly the case for me. Yeah. Definitely. And
I'm not saying that's for everybody.
No.
But I'm for Stephen, Otto, that was a coping mechanism for his trauma.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
And there was nobody, and there was no family, there was no support, nobody,
there was
nothing. You're on your own now, having to raise yourself.
Yeah, basically.
With the other wild ones.
Yeah, essentially.
The wildlings, as they call them.
And that's it. and the thing is, like, people like myself and those other people, we gravitate towards one another.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
It's family.
Yeah, it's family. Because and it is as well. Like, it was like my family, the street, that was it. Yeah.
So what happened next?
Well, it was, I had no one to tell me what to do and what not to do. So I could pretty much do what I wanted. And that's what I did. And I came, that was the time when there was a lot of ecstasy, it was acid, it was free parties. And I kind of immersed myself, and everyone was doing it. Like, everyone, it was like a kind of a movement, and everyone was doing it. Now, I did it, but I remember not really wanting to. But what else was there to do? Everyone else was doing it, so I guess I ought to do it. But I, there were some good times, but actually, I was always quite afraid of using drugs. Yeah, I kind of always knew internally that it wasn't okay. Like, I just don't think I was that sort of person. There were some people who love drugs and love doing drugs and really got off them and really enjoy it. But for me, it was, I was always quite fearful of using drugs. And
well, if you're a fear-based person, then that thing is only going to bring out anxiety.
There was a lot of anxiety. It was a lot of anxiety about using drugs. But again, what else was there to do? Everyone else was doing it. Everyone around me was doing it. So, I kind of just did it and just went along with it, followed the crowd, and just, I guess, belonging to something, no matter what it was. That was it for me, because, again, I'd always felt like I was outside of everything anyway, at all times. I'd always felt that way. And again, that had been something that had been, solidified in a very early age. And again, I'll go back to one of my earliest experiences. So being in London and being at school, and we'd get put into a bus, or from the children's zone, we'd get taken to school and dropped off at school. And I remember being at the end of every school day, I remember watching the other kids, and it was really odd, because it was almost like watching the other kids go to the gate with their parents waiting for them. Yeah, I was thinking, I wonder what that feels like. And we'd be taken through another gate and put into a van and driven off back to the children's home. So that kind of instilled that thing in me as well. It was like, you're different. You're not the same. You're not normal. You're not like most kids, you know? And again, back then, like, there was a certain stigma attached to, like, care kids. You're a care kid.
Yeah.
There was a stigma attached to it. So, that was the situation I found myself in. And again, the identity thing. So I'd never been brought up by or lived in a family setting with my own people.
Yeah, with black people.
With black people.
Yeah.
And I'd basically been raised by white people. But I wasn't white.
Yeah.
I knew that, obviously. And didn't really know what it was like to be black. Do you know? Christ. So I'm in this limbo.
No man's land.
No man's land. I'm in a no man's land. And it was... I just... It was horrible. It was horrible. Anxiety. Anxiety, like, you like, you know...
Well, it's certainly certain times you develop what's an identity crisis.
An identity crisis.
Because you don't know who you are.
I didn't know who I was. I had no idea. Yeah. So
don't know where you come from. Don't know. You ain't got your roots.
No.
You ain't got your grandparents, your great grandparents. You got nothing.
Nothing at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just limbo. So that was very difficult. Very difficult. Very difficult. But at the same time. And I think that's why I was, and you hear it a lot, I kind of became a chameleon. Like, you know, not really knowing who I was, but having the ability to adapt to whatever situation I was in. It's a survival method. And certainly with the drug culture and the criminal culture, it was like, you know, I kind of belong there.
Well, you certainly found a place to belong.
I found a place to belong.
Yeah,
I found a place to belong, and like I say, because people like myself and other people who are in that circle, in that world, we gravitate to one another, and you know, we all have similar stuff going on. Although it's never discussed, but like, I was like, well, if I ended up here, I know the reason why I ended up here, so there must be a reason why you ended up here. Do you know what I mean? Like, because we're criminals and we're drug takers. It's not normal. Do you know what I mean? But what's normal? Like, my life hasn't been normal at all. I know why I'm here, or at least I thought that's why I was there. So that's where I found myself, and you know,
just tell me about the substance misuse.
Yeah, so the substance misuse. So it was party drugs to begin with, which I really disliked because there was a lot of anxiety and fear and paranoia a lot of the time, and there was like there came like a heroin epidemic. You had the free parties, and then they were slowly coming to an end, and like the criminal justice bill and all that stuff, and they were shutting them down.
Locked it down,
They locked it down. And
sure, that was Michael Howard, the Home Secretary.
That's
at the
right,
time.
yeah. And all of a sudden, there was just this influx of heroin that just came from nowhere. And I tell you what, I remember it the first time I heard it, and I was at a free rave, and you walk through the raves, and you'd have the people, the drug dealers plying their wares, and they'd be like, you know, screaming out, "Got trips, got acid, got pills," and I walked through a rave one day, and like trips, acid, ecstasy, and then I had heroin, crack, and I stopped. I was like, what? At a rave, I thought, what's that all about? It's the first time I've heard that. Heroin, crack, we're a rave. Seriously, I was like, hey, where'd that come from? Now, you know, it was crazy. It was crazy because I think in that period, from when the free race, in like over the next 2 years, I probably know about 30, 40 people who died from heroin overdoses. Everyone just started using heroin. Everyone who was going to the free party, who'd been going to the free parties, you know, it just devastated. Like the whole of Oxford was just flooded.
And do you know
everyone was using.
And do you know what? I always associate Oxford with the universities, a beautiful town, and then when I hear the stories of addiction down there, I'm just like,
it's serious.
What the hell?
Yeah, it's serious.
What happened down there?
Yeah. Well, one of the things about Oxford back then was, so the what's the word? So social security, so gyros, getting dull. So Oxford was, I think, one of the only places in the entire country where you could pick up a gyro check over the counter.
Right.
Yeah.
Social
everywhere
security,
else, social security. Everywhere else, you needed an address
Yeah.
for them to send your gyro. But Oxford, you could pick up your gyro over the counter, and so everyone was coming to Oxford. A lot of the drug users, a lot of Vegas, the homeless, they'd all come to Oxford. They gravitate towards Oxford because they knew you could pick up a gyro over the counter. And that was one of the reasons why. Yeah. So Oxford is all, it's a beautiful city. You've got the university. It's world renowned, but it's got this real dark, seedy underbelly to it.
Yeah,
it really has, and
like a subculture.
It's massive. It's affluent town. Like there's just ridiculous money there. So yeah, the subculture is it's there. It's always been there, and it's very multicultural. A lot of people don't realise Oxford's very, of course, with a university town, it's very transient. It attracts lots of people, and there's a big black community there, and massive Asian community, and again, I was fortunate enough to grow in a part of Oxford which is probably the most multicultural part of Oxford. It's called Cowley, and it's a beautiful place.
Thank
really beautiful.
God for that.
Yeah, it's just a shame of the things that kind of went on there, and I got involved in. But yeah, it was only a matter of time. It was only a matter of time, and
so Oxford was flooded with heroin.
Oxford was flooded with heroin, and I guess it wasn't the only place. Like you hear it a lot. It kind of that's kind of what happened, and a lot of people got into heroin, and myself included. And I was young. I think the first time I tried heroin, I think I was like 16.
What?
Yeah. No, 16. 16 years old, 17. That's when I first tried heroin, to be honest with you. But it was my younger brother who tried it before me. And I can remember just being like, someone said to me, your brother's smoking heroin, my little brother. And I went mad, and I went round there and I confronted him, and it was him and a friend of mine. And I was like, what are you doing? And don't worry about it, do you know what I mean? And it was only a matter of time. I think it was like weeks or a month later that I got my first taste of heroin. And like I say, I was young, real young. And I will never forget it. I will never forget my first taste of heroin. And again, you hear it a lot.
Who doesn't?
It was like, where have you been all my life? Where have you been? I tried lots of drugs, and I'd never really fancied any of them. But as soon as I tried heroin, I was like, this is it. This is it for me. This is what I've been looking for. This is the wonder drug. It did. It's crazy. It did everything that I'd been looking for. The one thing it did do more than anything was it turned the volume down in my head. Yeah. Torment.
What people don't know with some of these drugs. A lot of people think that you pick the drug, but in actual fact, the drug picks you.
Yeah.
It's called the self-medication hypothesis.
Yeah, right, okay.
And what it does is certain drugs deal with certain issues for people quite immediately, and heroin calms down the anger in people.
Yeah. It calmed down the anger. It shut out the noise. The torment. I felt comfortable in my own skin for the first time. I felt comfortable in my own skin, and I felt like, it's that's the thing, isn't it? I felt, I guess I just felt like I felt normal. It made me feel normal.
Wow.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
Imagine that, everybody. Heroin made him feel
normal.
normal.
Yeah. Which is crazy.
Yeah.
Because that's not right. You shouldn't. That's just crazy. But that's what it did.
Yeah.
It made me feel normal, or what I thought was normal.
Yeah.
What it did is turn me into even more of an animal eventually, you know.
Yeah.
Because the heroin obviously came hand in hand with the crack cocaine
Oh my God.
as well. You know, you couldn't get one without the other. That's how it was. So that was it. That was my descent into that world, and obviously I had to fund my addiction, and
I don't mean to laugh, but it's just the way you.
I had to.
It's just the way you said it. It's just like, but I had to fund my addiction.
I'm sorry. I know you shouldn't laugh because I was just completely like, you know, they talk about the insanity of addiction. The insanity, but it wasn't just the insanity. I think it was my like warped sense of thinking, and my warped outlook on life. Do you know what I mean? And the things that I'd experienced up until that point, what that made me believe.
Yeah, you developed a really negative belief system.
A real negative belief system. And again, like I said, my attitude was I didn't care. I did not care. I didn't care about myself anyway. I certainly didn't care about anyone else. I didn't care. If you'd been through what I'd been through, you'd be doing the same. And furthermore, I have a right to behave in this way because if you knew the things that had happened to me, I have a right to behave in this way, and I have a right to take whatever I want, whenever I want, however I want. Yeah. That was my attitude, because those things were taken away from me. Yeah, no one asked me. Like those things were just taken away from me, and you know, authority.
You developed a sense of entitlement.
A sense of entitlement. Yeah. And it was like
you're going to say authority, Tom? Yeah.
No respect, zero respect whatsoever for authority, because my dealings with authority were negative beyond belief. They've been let down at every single turn. Yeah, you know. So
mistrust,
abuse,
everything.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah,
everything.
Oh, the worst of the worst that you could feel from authority happened with you.
Basically, yeah, basically. So I had no respect, but more importantly, I had no respect for myself.
Absolutely,
none at all.
I get that.
None at all. And obviously, you have no respect for yourself, then there's no way you're going to respect anybody else or anything or any other person. And my crime was just on another level entirely. I just had no care whatsoever, no care in the world. And I remember, and it's not something I'm proud of. Like when I think about it now, I remember like I was doing burglaries. I was doing like 6 or 7 burglaries a day. 6 or 7 burglaries. And again, I had this warped sense of thinking, like criminals have certain rules. You don't burgle family houses. You stay away from them. And Oxford being a student town, so I was just burgling student houses. And thinking that was okay. That's fine. That's okay. And actually thinking it's okay.
Yeah, that was those are your morals.
Those were my morals.
Irrespective of the fact that you're burgling.
That I'm burgling people's houses. And taking their goods and their belongings and laptops, which have got dissertations and this, that, and the other on. I'll tell you what, it became really apparent for me when that attitude became really apparent when several years later, after I'd been to treatment for the first time, before I came to Broadway Lodge, because I went to treatment many years ago as well for the first time, and I came out of treatment and went back to college and got into university, and ended up living in a house with 2 other people who were at university, and it was horrible. What happened is a friend of mine who I'd grown up with, who was a user, was homeless. I was quite naive then, and I took him in.
Oh, no.
Let him sleep on the sofa, and then one morning I come down and he's gone. And the girl who I was living with, student, she's like, I can't find my laptop. And I'm like, oh, right, okay. Thinking nothing of it. All right. And she's like, look, I still can't find it. She said, listen, Steve, do you reckon your friend's taking my laptop? I was like, no way. You would never, ever do that to me. Never. She said, well, look, I cannot find my laptop. Can you call him? I said, all right, I'll call him. I called him. I said, listen, my housemate, she can't find her laptop. And my friend's like, I'm so sorry, I couldn't. And I was like, you took the laptop? Yeah. So he stole the laptop. And I had a dissertation on it. At that point, it hit me. For the first time, it hit me. And I remembered.
Because she would have probably started to have a meltdown.
She was devastated. You know, and I was just gutted. I couldn't believe it, but that's the first time I'd ever felt it. And
the consequences.
The consequences. And I saw it. I saw it for the first time, and I thought about all those times that I'd gone into people's houses, student houses, and done that same thing. Do you know what I mean? Needless to say, I couldn't really stay angry for long at him, you know? But, yeah, gutted, really. It was awful. But like I say, then I didn't care. I just needed to get my needs met. I needed to get what I needed to get, and F the consequences. The consequences, of course, which were prison, you know, because I got caught, because I was prolific, and it was only a matter of time, and I didn't care, you know. Yeah, it was only a matter of time before I got caught, and get caught I did, you know, and I found myself in prison for the first time. Which was quite an experience in itself, and I always say when I'm speaking to people or you know, sharing my story, the first time I went to prison, and it was a young offenders institution.
Oh, right, yeah.
Young offenders, because I was still very young, and I remember being fearful because it's prison, you know. And you heard those stories, and I got taken to young offenders, and put on the induction wing, and be staying there for the night on the induction wing, and then the next day getting taken to the proper wing,
the
GP,
general
population. And I can remember walking, and it's an old Victorian jail. We had this centre and the Spurs coming off. I remember walking in there, looking around, and feeling like I was at home. That's what I felt like. That's the feeling I got. Because to me, it was like a giant children's home for young adult men. That's what it felt like. I felt like I was at home. And as soon as I felt that, all my fears just fell away. And actually, that first prison sentence, I thrived in jail. I enjoyed it. Yeah, it was enjoyable. I had some of the best times of my life up to that point, and that first prison sentence. Yeah.
Jesus.
Now, that's a reflection on how awful my life was outside of prison. Yeah, sleeping on crack house floors, getting up, going out, committing crime, using drugs all day, and then back on crack house floors. That was my life outside of prison.
So prison was like a safe place.
It was a safe place. It was home. It was like home. And you know, obviously, I was already institutionalized. It from growing up in care for that long, and then that's what it was. That's, you know, it was great. It was warm. It was a roof over my head. There were meals. There was a gym. Yeah. And actually, you know, it was at that point that I first began to realize that I was quite capable, that I was capable of doing certain things. I mean, I know it was prison, but like work.
Yeah.
And doing well at work, actually. You know.
You know, it's funny. Just what's just come to me. I was talking to my partner last night. I was talking about, we're watching this program, Gangs of London, and we've been watching Gangs of London, and we're talking about, prison being an occupational hazard of the career, of the choice that you make, and that's what it seems that is coming for you. It's just prison was just an occupational hazard for the career that you've chosen.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, it was a respite.
Yeah.
It was respite.
Yeah.
That's what it was. It was like, all right, now break. That's all right. I'll go there and clean up,
relax,
put
some weight on,
go to the gym. Do you know what I mean?
And then get ready for
another stint, which is exactly what happened, and that was it. And
how many years did that go on for?
A lot of years. I remember leaving jail for my first prison sentence. I was gutted when I left. The jail was so cushy. I can remember just thinking, like, because what did I have to look forward to outside of prison? There was nothing really to look forward to. Like, I was full of fear, and that prison sentence, like I say, it was the first bit of stability I'd ever had. I'd had for a long time. Routine, so structure, discipline. Yeah, and I quite liked that. I enjoyed it. Do you know what I mean? I kind of, and like I say, it was at that point that I realised, like, maybe I could have a better life. Like, the seed was sown, and it was prison that done it. Maybe I could actually do life, not normally, but. It wasn't to be, and like, I can remember leaving prison for the first time. The prison officer saying, "You'll be back." I'm like, "No way, I won't be back."
As they do sometimes.
Yeah,
You'll
be back.
Nice words of encouragement.
Nice words of encouragement. You'll be back. I'm like, nah, never. What was it? 9 months later, I'm knocking on that door, man. Here I am. But now I'd become an adult. It was adult prison. And it was completely different, and the novelty kind of worn off. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And I was very much in even deeper into addiction. It was a bit more serious. I was doing a bit more time now. And it wasn't as fun. Do you know what I mean? Like the sheen had worn off it a bit. It was a bit more grimy. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And that's how it went, and that's how it was. It was a revolving door for me. I would get out, and I'd be back in a few, and that would be that, and that went on for some time. And each time I went back, it got more and more tedious. That was it.
It takes it out of you every time.
It does. You lose a bit. You lose a bit yourself each time. Anyway, I found myself back in jail, and I was looking at a very, very long time indeed. And my probation officer suggested that maybe I ought to go for rehabilitation. And what it was, there was a treatment centre in Oxfordshire, notorious treatment centre.
I know the one.
World-renowned.
I know the one.
Concept house. Brutal, really, They were taking people in, like they were getting funding. And perhaps I should go for it. And I was like, yeah, of course. Let's go for it. I just wanted to get out of jail. I didn't want to do a lengthy sentence in jail. And so I went for it, and, I got it. I got the funding, and went to court, and the judge was like, yeah, okay, off you go to do a 12 months conditional residence, because that's what they were funding back then, 12 months.
12 months?
Yeah, I ended up doing 18 months, an 18-month programme, a year and a half in that treatment centre.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and like I say...
a brutal one as well.
It was brutal. It was a brutal treatment centre. They didn't mess around, like confrontation groups and...
Shaming,
yeah. A lot of that stuff. Image breakers. I mean, don't get me wrong, like... again, it was stability, it was structure. I wasn't using drugs somewhere, and I had some pretty good times there. Yeah, I had some pretty good times. But it was tough. But do you know what? More importantly, by that point, I'd begun to have enough. And not only that, I'd had enough of carrying around the crap and the stuff that was in my head. Okay. And I knew something needed to be done with it. Yeah. And actually, I did see that as an opportunity to finally sit down and talk some of this stuff through. Yeah. Because, you know, I knew I needed to do something about it. Yeah, yeah. I knew it. Like, I had to. And so I was given that opportunity to do that then. And actually, I grasped it with both hands. I thought, why not? Let's go for it. Let me give it a go. You know, who knows? And so I did, and I opened up about a lot of stuff from my past. Yeah. Because, you know, I believed then that it was because of my past and the things that happened in my past. It was that was causing me to use drugs and continue to use drugs and do crime. It was because of that stuff. Those were the issues. And the treatment centre was kind of geared towards that as well. They were all about the trauma and the stuff that happened in the past. And that's the reason why you were a drug user, why you're an addict. Very different to this place, you know, the philosophy, very different. Because their message essentially was, right, once you go through here and do your stuff and deal with your issues and talk about your stuff, that's it. You're no longer an addict, you're cured, you know. And it was very much about, because we're talking like 30 years ago now, that's how long ago it was. Very much about, well, what's your poison? Like heroin and crack. Okay. Are you an alcoholic? No? Cool. Then it's right to have a drink. Yeah? That was their attitude. You can have a drink. As long as you don't use your drug of choice, you're fine.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, basically. And that's and yeah, it's a shame because some really good work got done in that place.
God bless them.
It was an amazing place. They meant well. It was an amazing place. Like the philosophy, but the final message was warped. It was very warped. And they set people off. A lot of people went through there and went off on a path. I believed I was cured. I believed I'd cracked it. Just as long as I weren't using heroin and crack, I was fine. But I was drinking like an alcoholic. You know, it was ridiculous. And I can remember actually going out for a drink for the first time, and like the way it was set up with the treatment centre was you get to the end and you become a senior peer and you'd go out and work and you could socialise, but you were still in the part of the treatment centre. And I can remember going out for the first time socialising and getting drunk. And it was at that point the alarm bells started ringing straight away. In fact, like, I'll tell you the truth. It was at that point, the first time I went out, I was still in the treatment centre. And a voice in my head said to me, you're going to end up back in one of these places one day. You have to. At that point, I knew that the work was not done. It had not been done. I knew it. That something wasn't right. Something wasn't okay still. Okay. And that was just an internal thing. But at that point, it was like, well, what am I supposed to do, man? I've just done 18 months of treatment centre. Let me just go out and do what I need to do. And that's what I did. And I was working and I went back to school because I'd left school with no qualifications. So I went back to college and did really well, kind of excelled, you know, because I knew I was always capable. Like I was a bright kid. Yeah. I was a bright kid. Yeah. I can remember being at primary school, coming to Oxford for the first time and going to the primary school and like just excelling. Like they were like, right, we're going to have to put you upper class. Yeah. These are things I remember. Because I was way more advanced. And
how long was it before addiction came back, brother?
Well, it never left. Let's have it right. I tell you, it came back. It never left. It was always there. It was always there. And like addiction can manifest itself in all manner of ways. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for me, firstly, it was drinking excessively, constantly, women. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And relationships, that's another area whereby I spoke about at the beginning, but relationships really was like a sign in my, like, you are not okay. Yeah. Because of my behavior in relationships and my feelings internally and the way I used to react to certain things. Yeah. Like insecure, ridiculous.
I get it.
Yeah. So, I'm going to hurt you before you hurt me because I know you're going to hurt me. Yeah. Because everyone always hurts me. That stuff.
Complete mistrust.
Yeah, complete mistrust. So, at that point, that was another realization. You're not okay. There's work you've not done that needs to get done. So that, shopping, whatever, So it never really left. But it got worse. I was at university, and it was only, all it was going to take was something to go wrong, and one of my brothers passed away. I was at university, and I mean, he's one of my older brothers, and he had become like seriously ill a few years before, schizophrenia. Kind of just happened overnight, and that was a really tough time. I remember that being, again, one of the causes of me going even deeper into drug addiction because of the pain. Like, it hurt. Yeah. He became someone completely different. Do you know what I mean? And like I say, my two older, like, I've venerated them. Like, they were just everything I wanted to be. And so when he came down with schizophrenia, that just terrified me. I couldn't believe it. Because, my brother, he was the strongest man I knew. There was nobody else like him. And so when he got taken out by that, like, I was like, what? I couldn't believe it. Like, he became the complete opposite of what he was. So it was very scary. But he ended up on the streets.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
With schizophrenia.
With schizophrenia. Yeah, he ended up on the streets with schizophrenia, man. And, one of those statistics. And at that point, I was studying, I was working in, because I'd gone back to work in a treatment centre as a staff member, and then I left there and I'd gone on to work with the homeless and frontline services, direct access unit. And so, which was great, I loved it. Okay. I was good at it, I realised. And he'd occasionally come in and use the service, so I'd see him and it was around winter time, and he'd always come at certain, every couple of weeks you'd see him, and then he didn't show up, and I just knew something was wrong. So I put the feelers out, and we used to get notifications at the treatment centre about heroin, people going over and overdosing, and at this period of time there was a particularly strong batch of heroin going around, and people were just going down. And he wasn't an addict, but I think what it was, he was vulnerable. He would be getting a lot of money because of his illness, standard. And I think people just used to, when he got paid, people, you'd latch onto him and, and so on and so forth. And
as they do.
And he wasn't an addict, but I guess he would do whatever. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
So and that's that sense of belonging again, isn't it? Yeah.
And so he was found in one of the canals in Oxford, basically. Yeah. And he had drowned. But once they'd done the toxicology report, they found that he had had enough heroin in his system to take out 3 men. Okay. So it was tragic. And that done me in. Yeah. That was it. That knocked the wind out of my sails. And, I was in my second year at uni. I was doing well. I was doing okay. Like I say, I was still drinking. I had no idea really what what was going on with me. I didn't really know the nature of addiction and what addiction was about.
Yeah.
So I was just plodding along, like trying to make do. It was becoming tiring, though. It was becoming tiring because it was just a front. I was just managing to keep things together, but that was the, I guess, straw that
broke the camel's back.
Devastating.
Yeah.
Everything began to fall apart, you know. I ended up dropping out of uni, you know. One had to give, so it was like I was working and I was at uni, so I was just like, uni just went. And but I tell you what happened, because I'd only been drinking then and I wasn't using any, and I started smoking weed. So I started smoking weed. And
oh dear.
Yeah, the gift of hindsight, like knowing now when I look back on it, I see it for what it is. So I started smoking and smoking heavily. You know, I went from smoking like a 20 bag a week up to like a 20 bag a day in no time at all. When you talk about the nature of addiction, like it being a progressive illness, you can see, I see it for what it is now. So that happened. Then I started drinking even more. I wasn't at uni anymore, so I didn't have whatever. So I started going out and partying. I was using party drugs, started using coke, everything and anything. But again, I still felt like, as long as I'm not touching crack and heroin, then I'm still clean. And people used to say to me, how long have you been clean for now? Oh, about 12 years. You know what? It wasn't until I come into treatment this time, into detox. I was like, yeah, I was clean for 17 years. And my key worker said, you didn't have a day clean, mate. I was like, what? You didn't have a day clean. Yeah, you weren't even clean when you left the treatment centre. Forget out, wipe that. Gutted. Gutted. I was like, fuff. Oh, whatever. Yeah, that was a tough pill to swallow. But, yeah.
So when did you arrive at Broadway Lodge?
It was only a matter of time. So yeah, basically what happened is you know, I got sick and tired of being sick and tired. Like I threw in the towel. Like I was drinking a lot, I was using a lot of coke, and one day I just thought, enough. Let me just buy some crack. Do you know what I mean? And so I bought some crack, and that was it. And how old was I then? I mean, you're talking 39, almost 40, I got back into that. That's how long I'd managed to like last it out for. And like I say, it's a progressive illness, and within a matter of weeks, I found myself on the streets again, committing crime. Weeks. I mean, I was in a family home, and by now, of course, like I'd had 3 kids, beautiful girls. My girls I'd had. My first one kept me alive. The first one kept me alive because she came just after my brother passed away, about a year, and I was ready to go, to be honest with you. I was done. She came along, and I was like, well, now I have to live. So I lived. And I went on to have another 2. But yeah, I picked up a pipe, and I was homeless within weeks and committing crime. And within a few months, I was back in prison, man. Do you know what I mean? It was back to that life. And it was, I wouldn't say it was shocking, but it was a lot different to when I was on it as a kid. Do you know what I mean?
As a big man.
As a big man, going into jail. At 40, I was like, what? Completely different ball game. Completely different ball game. And guilt surrounding my kids, obviously. It was like, you know, I'd always sworn not to put my kid through what I'd been through, and there I was, and like abandoning them, and choosing drugs over them, and you know, they kind of got dropped out. So that was tough, guilt around that. But it was the self-medicate. I was in too much pain. I needed to do. It was either that or kill myself. It was either I use crack and heroin, or I kill myself. Yeah, and
it's pretty black and white, really, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And I thought, well, I ain't going to kill myself because of my kids. So what I'll do is I'll try and kill myself slowly. I don't know. It's crazy, isn't it? Insanity. that's what I did. And I suppose, I guess thinking about it now, it was that thing like, I mentioned about I always knew I'd have to go back into treatment. Mm-hmm. And maybe it was my way of bringing that forth. Like, okay, come on, enough. Just do what needs to be done. Mm-hmm. Throw yourself into it. Get this over with. Let's see what happens on the other side. Mm-hmm. If you survive this. Do you know what I mean? Which is, I know it sounds really odd, but I believe it's part of the journey. It was part of the journey. So, I come to Broadway Lodge. So essentially, that's where I found myself. I found myself homeless on the streets, using, committing crime, and with 3 girls who needed me. You know what I mean? And something had to be done. I was resistant at first, but eventually something had to be done. I was going to either end up dead or serving a very long sentence in prison. Mm. And neither of those were an option. So after being so resistant for many years and not really wanting to jump through the hoops to get into treatment, I eventually had no choice but to. So that's what I did. Mm-hmm. And I went to a detox unit in Oxford, which is closed down now. It's a real shame. Mm-hmm. Incredible place. It was a 12-step detox unit, and that was the first time I came into contact with 12 steps and Narcotics Anonymous, if I'm allowed to mention that.
100% you can.
I guess that's where the miracle happened. I went into that place with no hope whatsoever. I didn't feel there was anything else I could be taught that would help me to stop using. And at that point, my aim, or the best I could hope for, was just having a drink and having a puff, getting flat and just doing a bit of work. Like my pal said to me, we didn't use it. Just have a drink and a puff, what are you doing, and get a job, you'll be all right. So I was like, yeah, that'll do. That's what needs to get to. And that was it, because, at that point, I honestly, believed that there was no way I'd be able to go a single day without having to use a mind-altering substance. Mm-hmm. That was all there was to it. Yeah, whether that be drink, weed, whatever. Mm-hmm. Because I needed something to cope with the noise, which was still there, the torment. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I needed something. There's no way I'll be able to cope without something.
No, I get that.
Yeah,
I get that.
And that was that. Abstinence, never. No way. Someone said you live day to day without using mind. I'd have been like, you're mad. No chance. No way. I wouldn't even contemplate it. So I went into this place and I wasn't expecting a lot. I was quite arrogant. I felt I knew it all anyway. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Where I'd done the work and with homeless and addicts, I thought, there's nothing you can teach me. There's nothing, But I'll go in there and, like I say, I just hope for it. If I can just have a puff and a drink, I'll be fine. So long as I can stop using heroin and crack and stop going to prison, I'll be happy. That was it. Mm-hmm. So I went into this place and it was a 12-step and Narcotics Anonymous, HNI hospitals and institutions would do their service, so they would come in and they'd bring in shares and this, that and the other. And I know I'll get to the Miracle Mansion in a minute, but really that was an important place, because really that's where I first
where you got hope from?
It's where I got hope.
Yeah, same thing for me, brother. Yeah. I got hope from the detox unit.
Yeah,
Which this where they say H&I come in, and I thought, wow, there's a way out of this life.
There's a way out.
There's an absolute way out.
There's a way out.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. And they would bring these meetings, and it wasn't mandatory to go along to them. You put your name down, but there wasn't much else to do, and I just thought, I'll go along. Why not?
Exactly.
I'll go along and listen.
Exactly.
Who knows? I might hear something that will help me. Just have a drink and a puff. That's it. You know what I mean? Right, so I'll say, yeah, you're right, so I'm drinking a puff, and this is how you do it. But no, it was something else entirely, man. It was a miracle. I'll tell you what it was. So I had this false belief that I'd been carrying around for years, and that false belief, I mentioned it earlier, the false belief was the reason why I did drugs and couldn't stop using drugs was because of the things that happened to me in my past. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as long as that had a hold of me, which it always would, because I can't be separated from my past. My past is my past, it's my experience. Then I would always be using drugs. It was as simple as that. There was no escaping it. And people always used to say to me, you need to let go of your past. And I used to think, fucking, if you had a past like mine, again, you try letting go of that. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not that, and this, again, I mistakenly thought, like, I don't even have a hold of it. It has a hold of me.
Yeah.
Yeah. How am I supposed to let go of something that's gripping me?
Yeah, it's holding on to you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought, at least, anyway. And so I always had that belief, and I always had this question that, been going round and round in my head for many years, and that question was, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? Why can't I just be normal and do normal things? Why is it I can do all right and get so far, but then I'll just fall flat on my face? They're like relationship breakdowns and, being sacked from workplaces, which happened because of my drinking and stuff like that,
Yeah.
What is wrong with me? and again, my answer to that was always because of your past, because of things that happened to you in your past. Now, so what happened was I was sat in one of the meetings with Narcotics Anonymous, and actually that question, what is wrong with me, was I was given the answer. I was given the answer. Yeah, and it turns out it had absolutely nothing to do with the past. Yeah, the answer was quite simple. The answer to everything and the reason why I was the way I was and the reason why things happen the way things happen was because you're an addict. And it was as simple as that. You're an addict. You suffer from a disease of addiction. And I got it. I just understood it right there and then.
It made sense.
It made sense. And I thought that question had been answered.
Hallelujah.
That's what it is. It had nothing to do with my past. And at that point, the past that I thought had a grip of me, I realised I was holding on to it. Because at that point, I was able to let it go. Because it had nothing to do with my past. I mean, don't get me wrong, my experiences in my past and the trauma certainly led me down that path, which led to that life. But beyond that, it had nothing to do with it. Beyond that, it was, I'm an addict.
Wow.
That's why I can't stop using drugs. That's why my thoughts, feelings, and behaviours are this way. When you read the book, and you read the stories, and I remember when I first read the book, the Narcotics Anonymous Basic Test, and you'll hear this as well, it was like it was written for me. I couldn't believe it. I thought someone had, it's like witchery. That's sorcery. Like, how do they know this stuff about me? Yes. I couldn't believe it. It's mad. I couldn't believe it. It was like every single detail, every single step of the way, like, this is, if you do this and do that and the other, it's like, I do that. I've always done that. If this happened to you, and I've always done that as well. It's because of this, and that. And so that moment, and it was like a split second. In that moment, in a split second, my thinking went like that. Boom. Did 180 degrees. And I can only relate it to one other time I felt that way. The sensation and the feeling, and it was when I'd first used heroin. And I thought, where have you been all my life? Exactly the same thing, because you know what happened at that point? The volume went down, gone, without the use of drugs. It was a miracle, I couldn't believe it. And
What?
Yeah. Just happened. It was gone.
Do you know?
And at that point, a voice said to me, "You never have to use again. You never have to use again."
And you're in the detox unit. You've not even arrived at Broadway Lodge yet.
Arrived here, yeah. Do you know what I mean? And it happened, boom. And I knew I'd never have to use again. Ever. It was unbelievable. Couldn't believe it. And the noise went. And since that day, like, it's gone. My past fell away. My past fell away. That was it. It no longer had a grip on me.
So tell me, what happened how did you arrive at Broadway?
Yeah, I mean, I knew that wasn't the end anyway. I knew that there more work needed to be done, and that actually I needed to delve into this stuff deeper, this narcotic, this 12-step stuff. And so, you don't get to choose which treatment centres you go to anymore, not like in the old days, but they've got, and obviously that detox unit had a good relationship with this place. And so I was going through the pamphlets and the books, and I saw Broadway Lodge, the Miracle Mansion, and it's been open since 1974, the year I was born. So I saw that and I thought, this is the place. 1974. Yeah, I like that. It's a good number. And obviously they spoke incredibly highly of it. Like, this is the best treatment centre in the country. This is their they got the best
outcomes.
Yeah. It's amazing. Plus it's a 12-step treatment centre, and like I say, I needed to delve deeper into this stuff, and it was just right. It just felt right. I don't know what. Now, the only thing was, it was in Western Supermare. That was the only problem, and I was still quite resistant. And for some reason, I had this thing like, I don't want to go to Western Supermare, and it was because of this fear I had about the stories I've heard about Western. Like, a long time ago, it was the treatment capital of the UK. 30, 40 treatment centres, and I don't know. It was weird. I guess I was afraid that, with Western Supermare being known for having so many treatment centres, that actually there'd be a lot of addicts here, which there are. There are a lot of recovering addicts, and there are a lot of using addicts as well. But I had this thing like, well, if I don't make it through, or if I get thrown out, or if I leave, then I'm more likely to use drugs because they're going to be more drug addicts. So I don't particularly want to go to that place, which is ridiculous, really. I think it's just fear. That's what it was. It was fear. But obviously, like I say, it's not like the old days where you get to choose which treatment centre you go to. But I was like, look, I would go anywhere. Just don't send me to Western Supermare. So they were like, all right, come back. You go in Western Supermare. I said, all right, where am I going? Broadway Lodge. Sweet. Okay, I can deal with that. I can manage. Beautiful place. So I came to Broadway Lodge, and
that was pre-COVID, them times, wasn't it?
Pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID, yeah.
Lucky, and I don't know, like it's. I guess by then I'd learned acceptance. I'd learnt a few things, and my whole way of thinking had changed.
I think, if I remember rightly, when you came here, you was ready.
I was ready.
Yeah. You was ready to surrender.
I was ready to surrender.
Yeah.
I wasn't happy still, but I was ready to surrender. I mean,
if you hadn't already had surrendered,
I'd kind of surrendered.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I'd kind of surrendered.
I remember right.
And accepted my lot. I was beginning to accept that actually my will is not my own. Like, to hand it over. And if I end up here, this is where I'm supposed to be. And because I now had this belief that actually that's the way my whole life had been from the very beginning. Everything happened for a reason. Like, the things I went through, I was supposed to go through.
Wow, that's some deep acceptance, brother.
Yeah, it's deep. But I honestly believe that. I believe it.
I feel it from you.
Yeah.
I feel it from you.
For whatever reason, I'm not quite sure yet, but definitely the things that happened were supposed to happen. you know, and I kind of got that. I understood it, and that it was a higher power thing, and you know, I was meant to go through that stuff, you know, just like I was meant to end up here. Do you know what I mean?
Tell me about your process through here.
So yeah, I mean, fortunately, I got a great counsellor.
Honourable shout out to Sharma, legend.
Great, amazing
I
counsellor.
think she's been here 36 years.
It's amazing. Yeah. So yeah, I got Sharma, and actually, you know, the detox unit was just a detox unit. There were things that I'd been carrying around that needed addressing still. And this was the place to do it, the Miracle Mansion. I was still a bit sceptical because my attitude was the only other treatment program I'd done was brutal treatment program, and I was under this belief that if I was going to do well, it needed to be tough, it needed to be difficult, and from the information I got and the feedback I got, this place was anything like that. So I was a bit skeptical. I was like, it's going to be too soft. It's going to be too easy. Like, how's that supposed to work? Like, I'm an addict. I need it hard. Do you know what I mean? Because I take liberties. But I was wrong. Actually, I was wrong. And why anyway? Why didn't I get tough? I'm not a tough person. I'm soft. I've always been soft. I needed, like, you know. So I came here, and you know, I kind of resigned myself to the fact that this is where I am. This is the work that needs to be done. Do it. You know what I mean? Like, do it. Like, if you want to build a life for yourself, which you know you can now, then just do what you need to do. And essentially that's what I've done. And like I say, I wasn't happy about being in treatment. You know, like, you know, you work in a treatment centre, you hear people say, I'm so grateful to be in a treatment centre. Oh, I love being here. People used to say that when I used to look at them and I think to myself, what is wrong with you? Seriously, what is wrong with you? What do you mean you love being here? What is wrong with you? Like, we're like, you messed up, man. Like, I was angry with myself. That's what it was. I was angry. I was bitter. I was gutted. I just learnt that I hadn't had a day clean. Do you know what I mean?
All your clean.
All my clean time was
gone.
I was not happy.
Ego gone.
Yeah, really. Ego gone. And I was low. I was at my lowest. But there was hope. Do you know what I mean? Like, like I felt that it was over. It was done. That life, like that was over. Absolutely. And actually, I could begin to build something. Yeah, I was at the very bottom, and I wasn't happy, and there was a lot of guilt and shame, you know. But there was work to be done. Like, knuckle down and do it, and that's what I did.
100%.
That's what I did. Yeah.
You know, You just kind of floated under the radar here.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, just no drama, no problems. No. Just come in, set out to do what you needed to do, got it done.
Yeah.
And literally, and when I say it, you just floated under the radar.
Yeah.
I mean, at that time, I was going through some troubles and strifes here in a different situation. And then obviously I was just keeping an eye. But you literally, there was no problems.
There was no problems.
Not at all.
And I guess it was because, you know, I just had this attitude. I came here to do a job. I came here to do a job, and there was no messing around. I'm not going to mess around. I'm not here to mess around. I don't want to get involved in... I mean, obviously, I got involved because you can't not get involved in certain things. But
you didn't get involved in the drama.
That
can happen in some of these places, you know.
I was just like, nah, that's not what this is about. I knew what was available for me. I was able to vision it. This is the life I would be able to build if I just did the work. That was my goal. And so I set about achieving that goal, which is, you know, I'm still on that journey now. I mean, it never ends, does it?
Cool. How long ago did you leave treatment?
It's coming up to, well, actually saying that, I left treatment almost 3.5 years ago. I'm almost 4 years clean now.
Get in there,
It's incredible.
brother. Get in there, brother.
Yeah,
in there.
Almost 4 years. It's a
done-
miracle.
You done the dry house thing. You got your own flat.
Yeah, I did the dry house thing. Again, blessed. Everything just fell into place. But again, you remember me leaving here. Where do you want to go? Bristol. Anywhere but Western. I still had that thing in my head about Western. Okay, you got to dry house in Western. Acceptance. I was like, do you know what? I'm lucky. Beautiful dry house that you yourself set up. It was right. It was always right. And despite what I thought I needed, thank God there were others who knew what I really needed. Do you know what I mean? But I was able to hand over. So yeah, I did the dry house. 2.5 years I spent in the dry house.
It was incredible there. Led by example.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie.
Got involved, immersed myself in meetings, got a sponsor, went through the work.
COVID came in.
Yeah.
Got through COVID. In a dry house.
Yeah, in a dry house. And I was speaking to Maggie downstairs. She was like, how did you find COVID? I was like, it was good as gold. I was all right.
Yeah. COVID either worked two ways for people.
Yeah.
You either got through it and it just strengthened your resolve for recovery, or you flopped.
Oh, you flopped, yeah.
Yeah, you flopped it. It was black and white.
Yeah.
You struggled.
And it kind of strengthened my resolve. But to be honest with you, like, this using is not an option anymore. And people say that. They've always said it. But for several years down the line, I find them using. But for me, today, right now, using is never an option, no matter what. Yeah. Yeah.
For some people, when it's done, it's done.
It's done. Yeah. It's done. And no reservations.
Now, I have heard some rumours about you. I've heard that you've been in town with your beautiful daughters.
Yeah.
Daddy.
Yeah.
Spending the work dollars or whatever you're doing these days.
Oh man, yeah. A lot of that. It's beautiful, man. Do you know what I mean? Like, I no one's ever taught me how to be a parent. I've never had an example.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's pretty new to me, but I know that I love my children, and I do my best. That's it. I love them. And
Free girls.
Free girls.
Free girls.
Yeah, free girls.
God bless you.
I know.
Free girls.
Yeah, I got it all to come, man. They run me ragged, man. Got me wrapped around a little finger, but like, I wouldn't have it any other way. Do you know what I mean? They're beautiful, and like I kind of live for them, That's what I do because that's what it's about. It was my. I didn't do it for my kids. I did it for me, but the motivating factor was them.
Yeah,
I want to give them what I never had.
Absolutely.
She's just a parent who's consistent and who shows up and does things and builds memories with them.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Create memories.
And provide security and safety. And although I still fret because I'm here and they're in Oxford and, I think, but they're happy. I believe they're happy. They're happy, And they're not visiting me in prison. They're not visiting me in prison.
No, and they're not visiting your grave either.
No, even more so, they're not visiting my grave. And that's basically what my life consists of. Work, kids, and occasionally a bit of time for myself. But always being of service, first and foremost. First and foremost, it's about recovery.
You're sponsoring people?
I'm sponsoring people, yeah. Good. Taking people through the work.
Nice.
Doing service, meetings. Recovery comes first. Recovery always comes first. Without recovery...
What have you got?
There's nothing. There's nothing,
You know what? Obviously, I've known a little bit of your story, but I didn't know your story, and I've just been, I can't. If I'm honest, I can't wait to put this out because sometimes sometimes I listen back to it and I listen to the podcast and I think, if only people knew what some of us people have been through.
Yeah.
And now I've just got the real honour of being able to say, before you see these addicts, don't judge, because you don't know what they've been through.
No,
you know what
absolutely.
they've been through. You know, and we're incredible people that have had some challenging, traumatic, difficult lives.
Yeah.
And there are so many beautiful success stories like yourself, where you know, people are taking care of business, looking after their kids, you know, contributing to society again, where they took so much from. I've just got 2 questions for you. What would you recommend to somebody? What do they need to do to get through Broadway Lodge? What would you say?
Okay, so I guess firstly would be, certainly in my case, it was acceptance. You know, taking responsibility for your actions. Like, really, you know, like, the reason why I came in was because of me. It was because of me, you know, not anybody else. Also, gratitude. Gratitude's massive. Gratitude is massive. And although there were times where I didn't feel I had a lot, I didn't, like, you know, like I said to you earlier, like, they've got double beds now. It's like we had single beds. But for me, it's the first bed I'd slept in for about 2 years, because I'd been sleeping in crack house floors. And before I went into the detox, I'd broken into the basement of a church, and I was sleeping on a concrete floor in a church, surrounded by filth. Do you know what I mean? That's where I was. So gratitude. Yeah. I don't know. I guess just. I
think that's probably more than enough.
That's probably more than enough.
For people to...
I mean, there's so much. You know, there's so much more. I guess. Do you know, a lot of the time, and it's always the case, isn't it? You when they say you don't know what you got, it's gone. It's not until you leave that you realise. Do you know what? Exactly what was on offer.
Yeah.
You know.
Cool.
And although I think I got as much out of this place as what I felt I needed to, I think it's important that if you're coming here to recognise that you may only get one opportunity. You may only get one opportunity. Now, I know this place has taken in people multiple times, but that's not always the case. And whilst you're here, use it.
Take as much from it as you can.
Take as much from it as you can.
Because these days, and I'll say it out, they're not funding people the way that they used to.
Exactly.
And you're having to jump through hurdles and hoops. And let me say this to everybody, and I'll just say this. Do you know how many people have died on the waiting list, waiting to come here, having been on the waiting list, jumping through hurdles and hoops in their community drug teams, you know, just to get to a place like this. So once you're here, make use of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Make use of it.
That's the reality of the situation, isn't it? And that's tough, man. That must be tough. And
so what would you suggest? So what would your tip be for recovery now that you're there? You're in the promised land.
Brutal self-honesty. You know, for me, I need to be held accountable by others, but firstly, and most importantly, I need to hold myself accountable. Because I'm not perfect. There are still issues. Like, there's things like that are deeply ingrained in me that will take years to resolve.
Yeah.
And to overcome. And it's those things, destructive behaviours, destructive thought patterns and ways of thinking that has been proven time and time again, take people to places where you're backed up into a corner and you feel you've got nowhere left to turn apart from back to that life. And in order to combat that, you have to be brutally honest with yourself and hold yourself accountable. And not just hold yourself accountable, have the courage actually. And this is one thing I've learned, because, you know, before I came into recovery, the thing with me was like the shame, like I for me, everything was a mask, and I have this amazing ability to be able to put on a front and pretend that everything's okay.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time people look at me and they're, oh yeah, you look all right. Yeah, you look great.
Yeah.
Whereas underneath, it's not okay.
Yeah.
And that's what I was good at. You know, and it's easy for me to fall into that
pattern, yeah.
into that pattern. It's not since being in recovery and going into the rooms, going into meetings and listening to other people share openly and honestly and become vulnerable.
Yeah.
That's the one. Become vulnerable. You know, not be afraid to become vulnerable and be vulnerable and put your hands up and say, do you know what? No, I'm not okay.
In the recovery world, vulnerability is a sign of strength.
Yeah, not a weakness.
Not a sign of weakness.
Yeah, which is what I believed before, and I guess sometimes it can be like that. But you know, recently, for instance, over the past couple of years, I went through the steps, and my sponsor kind of has drifted out of the fellowship now, and so I guess for a while I didn't have a sponsor, and I had no one to hold me accountable, and I wasn't interacting with him, and behaviours started to come into play. Behaviours started to come to play in relationships and my behaviour around women, which has always been a big thing with me. And that little voice, thank God for that little voice. It's like
starts to talk.
Yeah, you're on a slippery path here, Steve. You're on a slippery slope. You may think you're all right now, but believe me, it will come on top, because it always comes on top. And if you carry on, the consequences might be fatal.
You know, it's funny, we still use the same words and jargons that come on top. It used to come on top when you was in that world of crime.
In crime, it comes on top.
And it can come on top in this recovery world.
It come on top in a major way. In a major way. That will make you feel like prison is easier. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Oh,
So thank God, and it's because of being sat in meetings and listening to people share openly and honestly, and then be safe to do so, and not get judged, punished. And so I basically, I went into a meeting. I was asked to do a share. As a main share, and I went to this meeting and I was asked, it's a step 10 share, which is about taking personal inventory and keeping your side of the street clean. And I didn't know it until I actually got to the meeting, and it was on top. It was on top because I'd not been doing that. In fact, if anything, I'd been getting away with stuff.
Okay.
I've been getting away. So I'm at this meeting, I'm thinking, right, how can I blag this? How can I blag this? What am I going to say? And that voice was like, you just got to tell the truth. Do it.
I hear you.
Tell the truth. And that's what I did. Wow, I kind of grasped myself up.
It must have been a bad share.
It was amazing.
It must have been.
Because they always are with the shares. It's the open and honest ones. And it really sets the tone for the meeting. And I was just open, and I was like, I'm not doing okay. I've not been doing the things I should be doing. I've been allowing myself to get away with stuff. And thinking it's okay. And behaving in certain ways and thinking it's okay. And old ways of thinking. I'm allowed to get away with that. They knew what they were getting into. That stuff.
Yes.
And I grasped myself up, and it was an amazing meeting. And they were like, "Right, you need to do something."
So you're back on track.
I'm back on track. Got a new sponsor.
Nice.
Started to work again. Stop behaving in certain ways. It's not been easy. I've had to end a relationship that I was in because I was in it for all the wrong reasons. Which wasn't
real certain things
back in, which wasn't easy because this is it, and more importantly, it was like, okay. You got work to do. You still got work to do. You still got work to do. There's
The work is ongoing.
The work is ongoing. The work is ongoing. You're not infallible. You're still susceptible to certain ways of thinking, and you will still allow yourself, like anyone else, you will still allow yourself to get away with certain things if you let yourself. And that's not an option anymore. That's not an option, because that's not the person I want to be. I don't think it was the person I was ever meant to be. Yeah, there's only certain circumstances. Like,
sounds like it's definitely not the person you want to be.
Nah, it's not the person I want to be.
Stephen, I just want to say thanks, brother.
Yeah, thank you
for coming in. And honestly, I had no idea that we would go to the depths that we went to.
Well,
you know? And I just really appreciate you sharing that story, because there are other people that would have gone through, trauma and had traumatic events and found themselves in really bad places, and know that they can come to a place like this and sort themselves out, and move on and have a life and have a beautiful life, and start to get back things that they'd lost and gain even better things that they didn't even know that they could get.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.